Right, I'll look at that never. Okay, so session is going to kind of be in two parts. The first part of the session is going to be talking about Microsoft Forms, which if anybody's used things like SurveyMonkey or did any of the Gov UK surveys, it's a similar sort of set of features and functionality to that. But there's also a quiz test set of features within Forms as well. So you can set quizzes, mark people. I think the way I've kind of set it is most similar to kind of like a high school sort of testing, but you can also do it if you were, say, doing insurance compliance type training. It's something we've done at Thomas Cook, but you could also do it for any of the role type stuff that we've got going around as well. And then the second part of it was kind of, it's an open Q&A, predominantly around Teams, but it's just to try and get some ideas of other training sessions that I can run over the next few days and weeks with you guys around some of the 365 things. So the first thing to talk about, Forms. So the way to get to Forms, it's part of the Office 365 suite. So log into office.com and you should see Forms in your list of applications. This is kind of like a hotbar of your top picked apps here. So if you can't see Forms in this one, you can just choose all apps from here, or off your waffle bar at the top here, you've got the option to see all your apps as well. Find Forms, click on that, and it will launch in a separate tab on your browser. And effectively, there's a couple of things that you first are presented with. You've got My Forms, so forms that you've created, Shared with Me, which are forms other people have created and shared with you as a collaborator. So you have some sort of edit permissions with those. And then Group Forms. These are forms that have been created by an individual and then transferred into a group. An O365 group, how we're predominantly using it at Thomas Cook is when we create a team in Microsoft Teams, you get an Office 365 group behind the scenes. So that's useful to transfer if you are the individual creating a form, but you need that permissions or the edits or the rights to belong to a group of people rather than you as the individual. You can move that into that group that you choose. What we're going to do is just run through setting up a new form. A form and a quiz, pretty much the same structure. The only difference between them is how answers that are provided in a quiz format can be auto-marked based on the information that you submit in advance. So what worked well yesterday, I've got a couple of items to showcase. So I'm going to go through a form showcase to show you all the different types and things you can do to set up. But the first thing you'd do is you choose new form or new quiz. So I'm just going to choose new form. The first thing you're presented with is you've got two tabs, your questions and responses. So it'll auto populate on the questions tab. And then you give a title to your form. So this is the testing form. And then you can enter a brief description to explain what this form's being used for. Often when you're editing sections of the form, you've got an area where you can either insert an image, which will open up a separate bar. It uses the Bing search, so the Microsoft's equivalent of Google. You can start searching in here. So I like to look for Muppets, not looking at anyone in particular, but it will bring through images that relate to that search term. It automatically is filtering out images that don't have a Creative Commons license. So this is just worth highlighting. If you're using these forms or quizzes in a public context, you want to make sure that any images or videos you're using don't have any copyright issues. So it automatically shows you images that you don't have to pay for the use or give credit to the provider of that image. So you can choose the image that you want. You can also look at images that you might have on your own OneDrive or upload from your machine, and then you can just add that in and it'll auto populate that in to the form. And then effectively add new, and this then gives you all the different types of questions that you can use. So there are 7 different types of question, and then there's a section element that you can add. So the section element allows you to break up the questions. So if you want one question per screen, you'd add a section with the question, another section for section 2 with question 2, or say you wanted to ask questions in groups. So maybe thinking about an office context, maybe you want to ask about the building. So you'd have a section about the building, maybe you have a section about the catering facilities and another section about the parking, for example, and you could then section out. So people would answer those questions in that section, hit submit to move on to the next area. It's also relevant in the kind of the quiz format because it allows people to see responses to those questions in that section before moving on to the next one. So I'm just going to walk through on a form that I've already created. So it's a form showcase, and it just highlights all the different types of questions you've got with some sample information in here, highlighting what you can do. So you can have a choice question. So this is where you have a pick one or pick multiple set of options. Effectively, this allows you to list out predetermined answers to questions. You can include an other option as well. But effectively, once you've chosen that as the question, you type your question at the top. You can add any pictures or videos, and then literally just start listing the information that you want listing in there. If you duplicate any answers in here, it does pick that up when you go into the actual providing responses. So I'll show you how that works. Pretty straightforward. The options you've got down here that's unique to this is you've got multiple answers, so you can allow people to choose multiple choice, or they can just have it so it's a fixed. So you get the radio style button, so you get the circle rather than the square. So circle means choose one, square means choose multiple. The other one is just worth noting, when you allow people other as an option, that's a free format text that they can answer. So when it comes to looking at the responses and the results, you're going to have to spend a bit more time looking at that free format text and those free format responses. So it's just worth bearing that in mind when you are using the other. It can make it more time consuming when looking at the results that have come through. The other option that you have on questions is you can set whether or not that question is mandatory. Is it required to provide an answer to that question? And then again, on each question, you've got a couple of options on there. So one of the options you have is shuffle. So this will then shuffle randomly the options that you provided. There are some studies that have been done that, you know, there is bias that people can use when answering questions based on the ordering of information. So you can use shuffle options to try and remove that bias. And you can also shuffle the questions in the whole quiz as well. Subtitle just is this little gives you an extra text box underneath the question where you can add a bit more context that you're trying to provide to people. So that's the choice style question, pretty straightforward. When you're editing a particular question, it's highlighted in grey, and then if you choose add new here, it will insert that question after the question you've got highlighted before the next one. So moving on to the next one. This is a free format text response question. On this one, all that's different is I've added, you can include a YouTube clip. So maybe you want to include a clip about something and ask questions about that. So maybe it's a short clip about company values and you're asking people to provide information on the company values, that kind of thing. And again, write your question, add any imagery, and then the answer that people can give, you can choose between a single line answer or a multi-line answer. So it just restricts the amount of information people can provide. Again, you can say whether it's required, mandatory, and that's it. Restrictions, you can restrict what information they can enter into there. It doesn't really apply to how we're using the question here, but this is useful in the quiz style when you're doing maths-based questions. So that's the free format text response. Again, that one needs a lot of manual time to review the information that's been provided, because anybody they can type whatever they want into there, but obviously that's often an option you need to use when you're asking people for feedback or to provide you know, unique information. The next question type is a rating, so you can provide a star rating, or you can provide a number rating, so people get to choose on a graph. And you can label on there to say, you know, 1 means don't like very much, 7 means like a lot, and you can choose the number of levels that you can have in there. There's opinions shared about whether or not, when you're asking for people's rating of something, sometimes you want to give them a middle neutral option. For example, in this scale it'd be 4. Sometimes you don't want to give them that option, so that they can't choose a slam in the middle option. They have to one side to the other. So when you're thinking about the question and what you're trying to understand from that, it's worth just deciding whether or not you want a middle option or not on this style of question. The next type of question is a date. So it literally is, as it says, provide your question, add your imagery, and then it's choose a date. The date format here is in American. I couldn't find a way to change that in the form. When you look at the responses in Excel, you can obviously change it to be British. But in the actual form entry, it's not too much of an issue, because when people respond, they use the actual calendar function. So it doesn't cause problems in the actual completion. So I'll show you a preview of this form once we've gone through these anyway. There's not that many question options, and again, there's no real extra features for that. It's just enter a date. The next type of question is the ranking question. So this one's quite a good one in the sense that you can ask people to rank things in order. And what I like about this is how it presents that information back to you in the results. But again, it's similar to how you set up a choices question. List out as many things as you want, and then when people get this question, they can move it up or down based on the ranking. Again, there's no real changes that you can do with that particular type of question. But like I say, that's a really good one in terms of understanding people's choices in the results. And then the penultimate style is it's called a Likert scale. It's named after a particular chap that invented this questioning technique. And it's to allow people to measure the level of agreement or disagreement using a symmetry scale on a particular question. So this has this is our every voice survey pretty much, isn't it? So you've got the center option, which is a neutral one, and then you've got equal sides of positive or negative agreement with that statement. And again, this one, when you see the results of this is quite a good one to see how it shows the results. And then the final one is the NPS scoring question. Let me just check on this one. I don't think there's any different. No extra features in that one. Yeah, so the last one is the NPS scoring type question. So, it's an NPS. I mean, we all understand NPS. And this one does the scoring as it's an NPS. So once you've gone through and set all your questions in whichever ones you want, you can use all of one style. You don't have to use a mixture. This was just a showcase. So just any questions on the questions, the styles, anything so far? You can type in chat or come off mute. No? Okay.
Yeah, all okay. Thanks, Grant.
Cool. So once you've created your survey, there's a few things you can do. The first one is a quick preview. So when you click the preview button up in the top right, so I was a bit quick, it will show you how that will appear to people, either on a computer or on a mobile. So it's quite useful on the mobile because depending on who you're sending the survey to, if you're sending it out to customers, etc., it might be that they've even got a mobile device as part of an email campaign or something. Computer, perhaps more corporate-based response is going to be on here, but it's useful to see actually how, and you can actually go through and preview how those will respond. So, for example, on this list, sharp-eyed amongst you, I'd put pineapple twice, but when you select it, it does select both because it knows that is there. So there are some reasons that you'd include that functionality as part of tests and stuff, but it's just highlighting that feature. So that's just preview. When you fill that in, it doesn't capture those responses. You can then theme your survey. You can choose whichever color. There is a option to search for an image, so I just search for some question marks, but you can just switch between these other themes, and it just changes that on the actual form. Pretty limited at the moment in the surveys. There's more on the quiz ones, but you can upload your own image as well. So some people have created specific imagery that uses the sides of the computer screen as the spare imagery area. You can then do some more advanced settings on that particular survey. So branching, so this is depending on the answers that people provide to previous questions, you can jump around onto different areas of the survey. So the annual leave survey that was sent out most recently, the first question there was, are you a part-time worker? Because there's slightly different calculations that are used if you're a part-time worker than a full-time for the annual leave. So what we had was that first question. If you answered yes to that part-time worker, it took you to question 2 and provided some specific stuff about part-time working and annual leave. If you answered no to that, it just moved straight to question 3. The actual end user doesn't see that it's question 3, it shows as question 2, but that branching is something that you can set up between them. So depending on the answers that people give, you can move them around to various different parts of the form. It's pretty straightforward. You select branching and then you go into the question, and on here you can see question 1. After you've answered question 1, where do you want to go? To the next question, to the end of the form, or skip to some other questions in that section? Sometimes if people, you might ask a question of, do you have any opinions or thoughts on something? And if they say yes, then you might want them to provide more detail around that. If they say no, you might want to skip those questions rather than just having them to type NA, etc. So that's how branching works. It's pretty straightforward. It can get a bit complex if you're jumping around backwards and forwards and stuff, but it's a relatively straightforward set of options for it. It's probably best advised if you're using a complex survey with branching to probably sketch out on paper first of all roughly how you want the flow of that to work, so you don't spend all the time setting it all up on here and then get confused, because how the branching shows you have to flick backwards and forwards between each of the questions and each of the sections. So sketching it out on paper is probably the best advice first of all, and there is a reset button if you completely mess it all up to just go back to the beginning. So that's the branching. There are some advanced settings for each survey that you can set out. So the first section is who can fill out the form. It defaults to only people in your organisation can respond. So basically that's anybody in your 0365 tenant. So that would be the people at Thomas Cook here. And then you can choose if you want to record the name or it'll be anonymous. If you choose to record the name, it captures the email address and the name of that individual as per their account they've signed in with. They get a little warning information label at the top of the form to say that your name will be recorded for these responses. And then you can also limit it to 1 response per person. So if perhaps you're just gathering feedback or you just want to limit the amount of times people can respond, you can turn that on. And then basically you can say whether or not the survey is open or closed. So accept response yes, or turn it off to say the survey is closed. You can add a start and end date and time for when that survey can open and finish. You can shuffle the questions, so the questions will appear in a different order to how they're presented. You can provide a customized thank you message. So when somebody finishes answering all the questions, it just pops up with a very basic thanks for responding. But you can put a customized message in there, perhaps provide some follow-up contact information or what the next steps are going to be based on the information that's been provided. And then there's the notification options. So you can give the option for each respondent to opt into receiving an email that provides a link to their responses. So maybe you need to enable people to remind themselves of what they've chosen. For example, if you're organising a Christmas party and you ask people what they want to eat in October, they're not going to remember when it comes to the Christmas meal 2 months down the line. But if you include that option, they can click the link and they can see what they've selected. And you, as the owner and organizer of the form, can get an individual email notification for each response. So that would be useful if, say, for example, you've got an open-ended survey, perhaps you're a department lead or something like that, and you've got an open anonymous way for people to provide information. You can get alerted if somebody's provided a response to that particular survey. So that's all the settings that are currently on here at the moment. There's a multilingual option. I've not played with this myself, but the 0365 does have quite good auto translate functionality. So you can choose this and you can set what the language is and then add any additional languages and it will do some auto translate options on there. So might be worth looking at if you're working in multilingual locations. And then just some basic feedback on forms in general to Microsoft and the terms of use for that. So effectively, once you've got that all set up and configured, you'd go into the share option. And this is where you're deciding who you want to share with and how you want to share it with them. So the most common way that you're going to share it is to send and collect responses. So there are 4 different ways that you can currently share. You can share with a basic link, so a URL link. You can just copy that and include that wherever you're going to paste it. So we're often pasting within Teams. You might be including it as part of a newsletter that's being sent out. You might just want to quickly ping it to a couple of friends on Skype or something. But that's the kind of the most common way to share. Just copy that link. The other option is a QR code. So I did this in the auditorium. So when people came in ahead of time, that was up on the big screen, so they could scan it on a mobile device and just for fun, just fill out the survey. But you could use this. You could print this out, put it up around wherever you're trying to gather responses. So maybe you're hosting a trade fair or some sort of a function. You can have the QR code up for people to scan. Maybe you're trying to collect information, contact information for people that you're talking to. You can just say, just scan that QR code on your phone, fill in the details, and I'll get the information. You get a downloaded image, so you can embed that wherever you want to embed it or print it out. The other option is to embed within a web page or Sway. I've noticed that's possibly new. So Sway is something else which maybe not aware of here at Thomas Cook at the moment, but you can embed the actual frame for the survey into a website, so you actually get the actual survey embedded so people can fill it in on that particular page. So maybe if you were doing something on a customer facing website and you wanted to capture people's information on there, you could embed it on a customer facing website as well. And the other one is email. I'm not going to click it, but it basically will open up a brand new email for you to send out. So that's how you send to respondents, so to collect the responses. The other way that you can do it is you can share that survey as a template. So perhaps you're going to do the same sort of survey every month, every week, or it's the same sort of thing you're going to use across different departments. You can share that as a template. So you just click on the get a link to the duplicate, and it will then create that as a templated survey. It clears out all the responses and it allows you to just tweak that survey as you want to. And then the other way is share to collaborate. So this allows you to share it with other colleagues. So perhaps you're working together as a smaller team and you want to work on it together. Maybe you're splitting the survey up into 3 sections and you're going to look at a section each. So you can actually work on it together. So that allows you to collaborate on that. So it's just worth making sure you are sharing the right link with the right people, so you don't send the collaborate link out to respondents because they'll end up over typing or not quite seeing the right information. So that's pretty much all the functionality of a survey. So any questions on any of this sort of the settings or the features or general questions on survey? I'm going to go look at the responses in a minute and the quiz.
Hey, Grant, This is Deepika. Hi, quick question. You know where you said send and collect responses and only people in my organization. What other options are available? So you can specifically type in some email addresses of people?
No, so basically the way that works is it's locking it down to either people in your organization, so any people within your O365 tenant, or anybody else that has that link. So say, for example, if you're at a trade fair, you'd choose anybody with the link can respond. You'd have the QR code up and anybody that has access to it could respond to it.
Okay. And so, when it says your organization, so does it mean everyone who is in your organization? So if you want to restrict it to a specific group of people, so say a team of 10, can you do that?
No, there's no way to do that at the moment. The only way you'd do that is just by restricting how you share that. So if you only wanted to send it to your team, you'd say, here is the link for my team to respond.
Right.
Don't share this any further.
Okay, so you send this link via an email to that specific group of people. Okay, correct, lovely. Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah.
No worries. Any other questions so far?
No. And under the settings, Grant, when you sent it within the organisation, I think it showed that you could restrict it to one response. But I assume if you say anyone with a link can respond, you can't restrict it.
Correct, because it doesn't.
You're not asking them to log on.
Yeah, and even through some sort of cookie type settings and Mac IDs, they're not tracing that individual. It is purely anonymous.
Okay.
And on that, actually, Adrian, if you wanted to capture the information of that individual that's responded, you'd have to put a question that says, please provide your name, please provide your email address, contact information, etc. Because it wouldn't do that, because like you say, you're not logging on. So that's kind of all the settings and stuff. So the responses. So once you've shared that survey out, people are going to start responding to it, hopefully. So I sent it out as a sample to a few people before the training, and then yesterday's training, a few people responded. So when you come into the forms, you've got your responses. So this is kind of a snapshot highlight sort of view. So it shows you how many responses you've had, roughly how long it's taking people to complete that, and whether or not the survey is still active or closed. You can then clear all the responses, print out a summary of this summary that you can see, or get a hyperlink to this summary. So if you were collecting the information and you wanted to share it with the people that responded, but at a summary level, this is what you could use to get it. And this is kind of how it looks in this summary view. So each question in its own section, and depending on the question style, depends on how it was represented in the information here. So this was the choice question. So this allows people to, it's highlighting which ones have been chosen. It doesn't rank it in information, in order, sorry. So it's not put the, mushroom seems to be the top, which is correct actually, because that's what Papa John said at the top, but you can see it in the graphical thing, you can see it's here. If you click more details, again, it'll bring up a little pop-up that shows you what people have chosen in this sort of view. You can open in Excel and get the whole raw data, but just going to walk through this summary to start with. The free format text responses, it just shows the latest few text responses that you've had. So there are 15 in total, because that's how many people have chosen to respond. It shows the last few. You can click more details to see it in this summary. The star rating, or the rating one, it just shows you out of how many it's been provided. Originally, the survey that I sent out was out of 7, but as you can see, I've dropped it down to 6. So it's still captured that information. It's not changed anything. It's just reflecting what the question is now, because that's the thing with the survey in the form. It's live, but you can update it and change it on the fly. So if somebody says there's something wrong with it, you can quickly fix it, but any information you've captured would still be captured and relevant. You just need to know that at a certain date and time you maybe changed it. So that's just one thing to bear in mind, but you can change this on the fly without having to tell people to, go to a new link. It's the same link, it's the same QR code, and the changes that you make are updated in real time. So the date one, again, that just shows the most recent responses to the date. The ranking, so this is the ranking chart. So this shows you kind of graphically, and it orders it for you. So it says that the top answer here is trigger, but it shows you that it was the first choice for over half the respondents. And it is the top one. But what I quite like is this option here. So Raquel's come 5th, but actually 46% of people chose her as 6th, but she's actually ranked higher than Boise because of how the rating and ranking has worked. So what I find quite useful for this one is if you present people with a number of options, you might say to 6 different people, choose something. And the first option that everybody gives is different. So you get 6 different first choices, but actually everybody gave the same second choice option. So this is a really good way of kind of ensuring that the general approval for a particular answer is showing correctly at the top. Because based on this, more people said they didn't like Raquel than Boise, but actually because more people said they did, so she's leapt up in the rankings. So that's a really quite like that one. It only works, shows in this view in the summary. When you look at the Excel, it's just text data, which I'll show you in a second. The Likert scale, again, that shows kind of this moving of the graph as such, based on how people agree or disagree with that particular answer that's been given. So you can see the middle line down here. You might not be able to see it too well, depending on how it's screen shares worked, but you can see the dashed weighting line. So this is the kind of the middle, and you can see when it's more to one side than the other, the approval or disapproval on that. And then the final one is the NPS, and I've dropped another 10 because I was 60 before yesterday, and it went to 50, and I'm now down to 40. So, but again, the NPS just lists your promoters, your passives, and your detractors to determine your NPS scoring. So that's the summary view that you can get here. If you choose to open an Excel, you get an Excel form. Just quickly open that and show you. It is literally just text data. Which one of my screens is it going to open on? So it's pretty good if you're getting text data. So it gives each respondent an ID, the start time and date, the completion time and date. It will capture the email address if you've got that turned on, and the name of the individual. And then it's literally what was the question, what's the answer, and literally that's how the data is provided. So the ranking one here, it just literally provides you this respondent ordered them like this, and so on and so forth. And then the Likert scales, it lists each Likert question as a separate question with the specific response from that individual. So that's how it appears in Excel. Then obviously you can do Excel wizardry using graphs and all that kind of stuff, all in here together. But you've got the data here. This is a live interactive view of that information. So if more respondents reply, you'd have to get the next version of the file, and that would appear in here. But if you wanted to go through, maybe somebody had responded, and then since they've provided the response that they've advised, actually, no, I want to change my answer, you can come here and change that option, and that saves to the actual master file. It doesn't reflect on the actual forms, but you've got it in the Excel data that you've got. So any questions on the responses?
So Grant, I'm assuming these responses are stored in SharePoint. So
No, they're
where are
not. They're stored within
these?
forms. So they're
Okay.
on the form site in the responses
Uh-huh.
tab here,
Yeah.
or on the Excel. It's not linked to a SharePoint as far as I'm aware.
Okay. And are these going to be retained? Like, is there like a time limit to?
No, they're retained.
They're
So
just there. Okay.
yeah, so the actual form itself, that's what they belong to. So
Yeah.
they will remain as long as that form's active, and you manually have to come and delete that particular form.
Okay.
And when you delete it, it does go to a local recycle bin that then you've got the ability to restore should you need to, if you've deleted it incorrectly.
Okay. So it's the person who's created the form will have that ability to retain for as long as he or
Correct.
she
Yeah.
wants to. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the responses.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you could download the responses and delete the form, and then obviously you've got them in that Excel format. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
No worries. Any other questions on responses? Okay, just going to show you the quiz showcase. It's nowhere near as in depth because it's the same format, pretty much as forms. So exactly the same. The only difference is there's 5 question types that you can set it to auto mark. So you've got the choices option, with maths turned on. I'm going to go through these in a bit more detail. You've got the text, single line or multiple length answers. You've got, that was just a test one, so there are actually only 4. And then a ranking question as well. So how the choice one works is you type in your question, add in your choices, and then you say which one is the correct answer. So at the moment, this is set to a single response, but you can have multiple answers. So if you had to get people to choose multiple ones, you could turn that on and you could say which one is the correct answer. So against each entry you've added, you've got a couple of options when you mouse over them. You've got delete, display a message, say that's the correct answer. So the reason you set it as the correct answer is that you can allow the forms system to do as much of the marking and the grading as automatically as possible. And this comment appears to those who select that as the answer. So when you select an answer, you then have to submit the answer, and then you would get that feedback on the screen. So this is quite useful if you want to provide that feedback straight away. For people to do quizzes, maybe you want to explain why that isn't the right answer, or maybe why they thought that's the right answer, as that kind of reminder tip. So you can do that for each individual option. So you just turn on or off that comment and add in whatever you want to type in to that particular one. So that's how that works on the choices option. And then, on the quizzes, this is how many points you assign. When the system can auto mark it, how many points would they score for getting that particular question correct? The next one is the same question style, so it's still the choices question style, but in the options you've got the math option. So when you turn that on, I'm just going to add it as a new one to show you. So choice, it's added it up here. I'm going to say it's math, which it's already done, and then when you choose enter the equation, you can add in whatever you want to put. So I've said 5 by 5 equals, and it's then giving me suggested results. So it's saying, do I want to put these as the options? So I can choose the individuals, or I can click add all and add all of those in. That kind of automated help that you get, I've only seen it on the maths question, but that's not to say that it might not come in the future versions of the questions as Microsoft provide updates to this part of the forms features, because it is used, 365 is used quite heavily in education, so I imagine they're going to probably invest a bit more time and effort in this. Again, set your number of points that you want to give. You can shuffle the options like on the, as we showed in the survey, so these are all muddled up. The other option you've got is the text answer. So you can use this as a, if there is a definite answer, you can enter the answers. So I've chosen name a primary color, and then I have added in the 3 primary colors as the answer. So if anybody types that, it's not case sensitive, but they have to type specifically that word. They can't put red full stop, because that wouldn't work. So if you thought maybe that people are going to do that, you could add answer, which is with a full stop on the end of each of these. So basically, you as the quizmaster, you need to set the right information that people could have. You can manually, when you go into the responses, you can manually adjust. So if somebody's had a bad day and misspelt yellow, but you knew that they meant yellow, you can manually give them that mark afterwards. Again, nothing really different in here. You can choose a long answer. So maybe you've said Macbeth by Shakespeare, discuss, and they want to write 4 or 5 paragraphs. Again, you wouldn't have that as an automatic answer, but you could review that in the way that the responses work for quiz. And then the final one is ranking. So again, a ranking based question. So put those in order. They have to be in this exact order that you've given. They have to get it all right to get the points automatically. So if, for example, if somebody had put Gone with the Wind at the very bottom, but had got everything else perfectly in order, they would still score 0 in the automatic marking. So you can manually correct that when you go through and do the grading. So that was very quick on the question setting for quizzes. Any questions on? You can set all those other question types. They do exist. You can go and choose them. So if you want to choose date, but you can't have the system automatically answer that for you. Any questions on question setting for quiz forms? Okay. So responses is where it's a little bit different. I did actually track people's names on this, so if I've had any of my volunteers on this call, they're going to see them. So I can see I've had 7 responses, what the average score is from people, and it's still active. You can review the answers and post the scores. Again, you can open an Excel again, and you get this kind of summary view of the information. So maybe you as the person that's setting this might highlight a particular area of concern or investment or development that needs to happen based on the answers that you're seeing. When you do review answers, I think it's Paul Harrison that comes up first. Yep. So this is showing me that this respondent here, and they completed this. They got this many points. This is how long they took. I have actually graded Paul's responses. So I've given feedback to Paul. I'll tell you what, actually, let me go to a new one because Katie responded. So this is an ungraded. So this is the automatic view. So in this drop down, you can choose from all the different participants. So I've just selected Katie because I've not had time to complete this. Now, Katie took 91 minutes. I imagine she was distracted. And it's been auto graded as 5 out of 11. So I can give an overall comment. So as an overall, I can give some feedback here on the overall set of questions. The system has auto graded that Katie got this question correct and gave her the number of points. Maybe I want to come along and say, actually, you did really well on that one, Katie. I'm going to give you 5 points, so you can give extra credit. And then you can provide a comment specifically for that question as well. So this is where the manual side of it comes into doing these questions. So again, this is auto graded this one. So it's given the correct number of points. You can do the same against on that one. It's added this extra question in, so I created that one in that preview mode with you guys. So it's saying that there's no answer been provided, but that's because I added it in at a later date. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. The text one, you can see red's been entered and it knows that's a correct answer. So the order here, for example, so actually Katie's got most of this in the wrong order, apart from this very last one is in the correct slot. So maybe I want to give her, 1 point for saying actually you got 1 in the right area, and I could provide a comment. So once you have gone through and where necessarily graded that individual, you can then publish their individual scores, which we'll look at in a second. The other way to look at the questions and grade them is maybe you want to look at each question in its individual nature. So maybe you just want to go through and say, right, let's give individual feedback on question 1, because maybe it's not an auto graded question. Maybe you want to go through and review what each individual's put. You don't see, as per what's provided to you on the screen initially, who's provided that answer, so you can do it without any bias. But if you want to click on the one response, it's telling you who and how many of those people chose that as that response. So that's pretty much that. So once you've gone through and graded all the individuals, or as many as you want to, this is where you then post the scores. So when you click on that, it takes you through to show you which scores have you posted and which ones you haven't posted, and you can preview those. But effectively, once you are happy with people, you can choose those individuals or all of them and post the scores. That then means that those individuals can click the link for the quiz that they received originally. They can click it again, and it will then take them through to their results, and it will show them any of the comments that's been put through. The order of the question is different because I've got it on random order, but basically this will show any comments that have been provided against those, where they got it wrong, and any comments. And if they've been given marks where they didn't ordinarily get marks, that score is adjusted in that final grading. So that's pretty much everything on quizzes. You've got some better themes. That's the only difference, really. So any questions on quizzes and responses? I'll just open the Excel. Doesn't show anything particularly different, but just so you guys can see. So you can see it's got the name of the individual, and then it's got the total points, any feedback that's been given against each question as part of the grading and the score. So that's all captured in there as well. Any questions on quiz responses?
So Grant, just a quick one. When you have these different question styles which you add, this is do you get prompted to which style you're choosing when you're saying, okay, add another question to it?
No. So when you choose add a question,
yeah,
it literally is your choice based on what question you're setting. So you would need to do some thinking about what question you want to set, because again, there is some research that suggests the question style you use can influence the response that you get. So it is worth having a think about what is the right type of question for the particular question that you're asking, and how you want the response, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So these question styles, whether it's a choice, text, rating, those are all the choices available to you when you add a new question, and then you
Correct.
can choose the right style. Okay.
Yeah.
In the form itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a limit to how many questions you can go up to?
Not, there probably is, but not that I've encountered. So I think most of the sort of the surveys and forms that we've done haven't exceeded more than about 15 questions. But there is normally Microsoft normally have a kind of a known limitations page for each of their pieces of software. So I'll dig that out and see if I can find the equivalent one for forms about how many what limits there are, because there'll be limits around the number of questions you can set, the number of choices per question, and there'll probably be the limits around the number of respondents as well, possibly, that you can have for a particular survey as well. But I'll dig out the Microsoft page for that and let you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Grant.
Any other questions on this? Okay, as I say, you can all get to. Yep.
I know you've recorded it, but when we don't come to this school anymore, how do we get the recording if we want it?
So it'll be on stream. So I'll post a link to it. So basically, it gets captured straight up into the Microsoft Stream, and then it'll be available to people to view. Really.
Okay. Thank you.
I think you can download a copy of it as well if you wanted to take it with you elsewhere. As I say, so you can get to forms from office.com. So it's just there. Everybody's got access to it, so you can start using it. It is really straightforward to use, as you've seen. Just think about how you want to phrase your questions and go from there. So unless there's any other questions, that's kind of it for the first part of this session, to talk about forms. The next part of the session is just kind of an open Q&A. We'd said around Teams, but it's just more about, are there any things that people want to quickly know about anything in Teams or wider O365, or areas for other training to kind of focus on? The floor is open. I'm going to stop the recording there, actually.